Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Speak Up Sis talk show for authors, conversations that connect. This is the place where every day women and men have an opportunity to share their stories to inspire yours. We say what you think no one wants to hear, but everyone needs to know. I am your host, Angel Charmaine, and today we've got another amazing guest author here in the space. First, I'd like to say thank you to each and every one of the authors who was a part of our holiday author showcase. We had an amazing time last week. I really hope that you all got an opportunity to listen in. If you didn't, you can always visit speakupsis.com/talk show and you can watch all of those authors right on our talk show website. But today we've got our regular Speak Up Sis talk show conversations that connect here. And we've got author Sandra, and I say Sandra or Sandra. She is going to correct me so that we know exactly how to pronounce her name. But Sandra Gamble is her name. And she has written an amazing book. She deals with mental health awareness. She does her own lives in her own spaces. And so I believe we're going to have a really robust conversation today. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome Sandra into the space today. How are you doing, sis? It's good to see you.
I am doing awesome and amazing. It is wonderful to be here. Wonderful to see you.
That's what's up. Thank you so much for choosing to come into this space. I appreciate it. So tell me, is it Sandra or Sandra?
It's actually Sandra, but I will answer Sandra.
Okay. So I'm going, since you say it is Sandra, I am going to call you Sandra. One thing I totally believe in is people's names are meaningful, and we should learn how to pronounce people's names the way the name is supposed to be pronounced. If we can pronounce Versace and Louis Vuitton and all the rest of these names, then we should take the time to learn people's names. So if it's Sandra, I'm gonna call you Sandra.
Okay. All right.
that's that's what's up. We good with that?
We're good with it.
All right. So I am so excited to have you here on Conversations That Connect. We actually got an opportunity to meet in person at the Our Words Matter Black Author Expo. How did you even hear about the expo?
So I met Deborah at the Black Authors Expo in Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah, and she and I connected then, and it
Gotcha.
went, and it went from there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Did you enjoy yourself at the expo in Aiken?
I sure did. I had a wonderful time. I met some amazing people. It felt so good to be in a space with like-minded people and
Yes.
my people. It was wonderful.
I thought so too. It was absolutely beautiful. I think Deborah did a wonderful job putting that together. So I'm happy that I was actually able to meet you in person prior to coming into this space, because oftentimes my guests I've never actually met in person. And so you have to kind of get that connection through the screen. But I was able to meet you, talk to you, actually touch you. And so I think I know this is going to be a really good, robust conversation. I would like for you to share a little bit about who you are, Sandra. Like, what do you do on a regular basis? Are you a full-time author? Do you have a regular job? You will please share with our audience a little bit about who is Sandra Gamble.
Okay, sure. So my name is Sandra Gamble, also known as the Hope Dealer. Yes, right, the Hope Dealer. Some people sell dope. I don't do that. I deal hope. People builder. Some people build houses. I build people. Mental health counselor, life coach, author, notary, and Jesus girl. So that's who I am. I've worked 11 years as a mental health counselor in adult services. I've done 7 years as an intake transitional coordinator in an addictions program in maximum security prison. 3 years at Department of Social Services, 1 year as a voc rehab counselor. So I have my heart to serve. That's what I do. And I'm also the founder of Hope Dealer Wounded Healer LLC, where I see people for counseling sessions. It's something called Coffee Shop Talk. I meet them in a coffee shop for counseling sessions. So that's what I do.
Wow, how cool is that? Okay, so let's back up. I feel like we're a kindred spirit here because prior to becoming a full-time entrepreneur, I've operated in a few of those spaces, if you will. And it sounds like you are a public servant,
Yes.
teacher, advocate, healer, all of those things, right? And so I like that. I feel like sounds like she's reading off my resume here. So I absolutely love that about you. And you have such a positive disposition, and a great positive attitude. So I really like that. So, Sandra, we have people who are going to come into our space today and they're going to talk to us. They have an opportunity to ask questions or to leave comments. Are you okay with having conversations with our viewers?
Absolutely. Let's talk.
Okay. Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome some of our guests into the space who are here. Harold Best Thoughts. She is watching on the Speak Up Sis YouTube channel. Hello, Deborah. It is good to see you. Thank you so much. If you are watching on the Speak Up Sis YouTube channel, please make sure that you click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you're alerted when we have new content on the channel. Thank you so much for joining us via our YouTube channel. She says, I am so glad the both of you came and enjoyed yourselves. She's referring to the Black Author Expo. Yes, ma'am, we absolutely enjoyed ourselves. For
Yes.
those of you who are going to come into the space, I want you to know that you can ask our author questions. Just leave them in the chat. If you have comments that you want to make, if you're really feeling the discussion, then talk to us in the comment section and we will talk back to you. Okay. So I want to start with why you decided to come into the author space. You've been an advocate, a counselor, you are a healer, you teach, you do all of these different things. What led you to entering the writing arena?
True story. I had no desire to write. But what I did have was a title that was given to me many, many years ago by God. And the title was To Hell and Back, The Power of Forgiveness and Redemption. I didn't do anything with the title, but I heard the title. And so fast forward many, many years, I decided to write in 2020 when the pandemic hit. It's almost like God was saying there's no excuse now. Somebody needs to hear your story. And so that's how I got started in the author space. 2020, came back in 21 and wrote another book, and then in 2023. So that's how I got started.
Did you write as a child? I hear lots of authors will say, yeah, they started publishing work in their adult years, but they were writers when they were little, writing journals and diaries and things of that nature. Were you also a writer as a child prior to becoming a published author?
Yes, I always had a journal. Ever since I knew myself, I was always drawing the paper and pen. And my aunt, who was, she wrote poetry. She would write poetry. Like if someone transitioned in our family, she would write the poem, and then she would have me read it at the services. So I think it was always there. And I think she saw the gift and helped me cultivate the gift.
Okay. It's always great when you've got an older person to help get you into that space of reading and writing. I remember my aunt, one of my aunts, God rest her soul. She is the reason I really started reading, beyond just what was given to us in school. She was a romance book reader. Danielle Steele was her favorite romance author. She had like shelves and shelves of Danielle Steele novels. And when I was probably about 13 or something of that nature, she realized that I liked to read. I was consuming a lot of books from school. And so she would bring me Danielle Steele novels. Right. I guess nowadays, with the type of parenting we have now, people may frown upon that. But Danielle Steele wasn't writing like soft porn or anything like that. They were just love
Love
stories.
stories.
It
I'm
was just
familiar.
love stories. And so I think it's wonderful when there are adults in our lives who recognize what we enjoy as children, whether it's writing, reading, exercise, sports, whatever, and they help you to sort of flourish in that arena. I really love that. Did you enjoy writing while you were in school? Did you have like a favorite English teacher? Did you used to write poetry and things of that nature? What was your favorite type of writing as a child?
I was just journal. That was my thing. I would write about my day
Okay.
and write about my feelings, and I did that for ever since I could understand feelings, because I had a lot going on as a
Mm,
child, and that's what we want to talk about is this book. So it was my escape
right.
to write. Yeah,
Okay. That's what. Did you have a little diary with the lock and key on it?
absolutely,
I,
absolutely.
I think that was a 70s, 80s baby kind of thing, right? They would make those little diaries with the lock and key, and it's like I told my mama I want the one with the lock.
Yeah,
I
me too. I had to have the one with the lock.
didn't want nobody in my business, but listen, you understand the parents back then wasn't nothing a secret. If they found it, they was gonna read it.
Yes.
So I want us to kind of talk a little bit about how writing is therapeutic. Yes, this your book deals with a lot of life issues that you've dealt with. But prior to getting into the book itself, I want to talk about how writing our stories, whether it's a memoir, whether it's short stories, whether it's self-help, whatever your writing is, how it can be therapeutic to kind of help with what you're going through. Do you think that writing is therapeutic? I'm sure you're going to say yes. So if you'll tell me, give us some reasons why it can be therapeutic for people.
Well, I know writing is therapeutic, and writing is also for me a part of the healing process. I'm one of these people that believe that we cannot heal what we hide, and when God allows us to go through an experience and bring us out on the other side, it becomes our responsibility to go out and help somebody else. So your story becomes somebody else's tool guide, if you will. And it also helps you to remove the shame
Mm.
that potentially could be attached to what you have endured.
Absolutely. Okay. The title of your book is To Hell and Back: The Power of Forgiveness and Redemption. To hell and back. I remember hearing my mama say, come hell and high water. Right? But this idea of to hell and back, what can people expect from to hell and back, the power of forgiveness and redemption? Are you having to forgive yourself? Are you having to forgive other people? What can people expect from to hell and back?
To Hell and Back is my personal journey about forgiveness for my father, who had mental illness, bipolar, if you will, untreated mental illness, and was verbally, physically, and emotionally abusive toward myself. And so we know that scriptures talk us about the woman with the issue of blood for 12 years. I was the woman or the girl with the daddy issues for 12 years. I ended up taking care of a father that could not take care of me for 12 years. And the person that stepped out of unforgiveness prison was myself. So the forgiveness is not for him, the forgiveness is for you. It sets you free.
12 years of taking care of your father. Was he institutionalized? Did he live with you? Did he live on his own? How is it that Sandra was the person who ended up in a place of taking care of her father?
Let's be clear, I didn't want to. So I want to go ahead and put that out there.
Okay.
I graduated from college in 94, and I had plans to move to Atlanta. That was my plan. It was like, I'm done with my dad. I'm grown now. I'm going to live my life, because he had consumed so much of my life. And so when I came out of college, a month after I graduated from college, he ended up in the hospital with a quote unquote nervous breakdown. And my thought process, because I'm an only child, my parents are divorced. So my thought process is, he better get well really, really quick, because I don't have to do this with him. But, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And so what turned out to be one hospitalization went on to be 32 hospitalization for either mental health or physical health. And so I didn't choose it, it chose me.
32 hospitalizations?
32.
Okay, so I have got to ask. I know now you're full on adult. You've lived life. You've had experiences. You love the Lord and all the things. But when you talk about getting out of high school, going to college, were you a strong believer at that time? Were you living the godly, holy, righteous life, right? So I'm trying to get an understanding of how you found yourself in this place where you would say yes, because there are lots of young people, lots of children who would say, mm-mm. So what was it that led you, not knowing, not talking about what we know about God and everything now as adults, right? But as a young person, what was the thing that's where you said, I'm gonna help my dad? Because you didn't have to.
It's weird, because it's almost like it snuck up on me, if you will. I had no idea that one hospitalization would have been 32 hospitalization. I had no idea that it would have been 12 years, because that was not my plan. All I knew is that I was taught, honor thy mother, and thy days may be long upon the land. But I asked God, I said, how do I honor a father that did not honor me? And so I didn't do it perfectly, but I stayed for the test. And so I just did it. I did it out of obligation. And that's when I have found a real relationship with God, because only God could allow me to take care of dad that couldn't take care of me. My dad was verbally, physically, and emotionally abusive toward myself and my mother. He told me that I was dumb, stupid, ugly, and never be anything and never amount to anything. And for many, many years, I believed it. And so I had to unlearn what I had learned from my earthly father and find my identity in God for real, because I didn't know who I was. I thought I was broken. I thought I was ugly and didn't amount to anything, because if your earthly father tells you that, then you're going to believe it.
Right. Oh, goodness. This is such a heavy conversation. It's such a heavy topic. Do you see this book impacting not just adults? Do you also target maybe teenagers, young adults? Is it written for what's your age demographic here? Because I can see, yes, I can see older people sort of backtracking and learning a thing, right? They've been through it and now they're having to. But do you think about connecting with younger people who may be going through the process as children, right? Like you were as a young person, to potentially help them earlier?
I believe, honestly, I'm going to be honest. I believe that this book belongs in every household in the world, because either it's your story or you know somebody whose story it is. And especially in the African American community, because we were taught if it happens in your house, it stays in your house. And my question is, what if it's killing you? So I believe that this book is beneficial for every household.
I love that. And what you just said, it is something that I have spoken about for so long. And I agree with you. Any writing that is helping to teach us about forgiveness, understanding what it means to be redeemed, right? Helping us to understand what it looks like to honor your mother and your father, even when they have not trained up a child in the way that they should go, right? Because that sounds like what you had to deal with, what you had to go through, and what you have in turn written about. I like what you just said, because Revelations 12 and 11 tells us that we overcome him, we triumph him, right? Triumph him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimonies, and we do not love our lives unto death. And that's the part that connects with me when what you just said. And a lot of people don't realize that your reputation, that's your life, right? Not just your physical life. There's so many parts of us that make up our life. And oftentimes you'll hear people say, I'm going to take that to the grave. I'm going to take that to the grave. And I believe that taking it to the grave is what takes us to our grave earlier than what we should have to, right? So
Absolutely.
I 1,000% agree with you there. Latoya, Dr. Mack, hello, sis. We see you in the building. Thank you so much for tagging other people and including them in this conversation. We welcome you all for questions and answers. Feel free, if you have any questions for author Sandra Gamble, put them in the chat. We would love to hear from you. Harold Bed's Thought says, amen. I tell myself that daily. Forgiveness is for you, not the other person. Absolutely. Absolutely. Latoya says, hey, how you doing? Thank you for joining us today. Harold Bed's Thought says, taking it to the grave is the problem. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think about it in terms of blackmailing, right? You can't blackmail me about nothing I done told. Right? And I believe Satan tries to blackmail us in our lives. You've been through this, you've been through that, you've been through this, you've been through that. And we just like, oh, we just so shame and we feel so guilty and we have all this stuff until he can keep holding it against us because we refuse to talk about it. So how did you get to this place? Because we talk about it like it's super easy. I'm just going to tell my story. I don't think it's as easy as it sounds with us just having this conversation. So how did you get to the place where you said, because yeah, you've been writing, I get that, but now you're writing about the hardest parts of your life and you're sharing a story that's personal, that deals with your family,
Right,
right?
right.
So how did you get to that point where you're able to share openly?
Okay, so full disclaimer, I did not want to share. Let me go ahead and put that out there. but I felt an obligation to God to share. 20 years ago, I had gotten this title, but I couldn't write the book, wasn't considered writing the book because I was still dealing with the dad issues, right? And so after my father transitioned, because he passed away in 2006, I kept hearing the title and I kept ignoring it. When the pandemic hit and I was working from home as a counselor, I felt like God said, now it is time. And I was like, I don't want to write my story. I don't want people to know what I have endured. And I could hear the Holy Spirit say, I dare you sneak your healing from me and then act as if I didn't do anything for you. I allowed you to keep your mind in what most people would have died in so you could help other people and bring me glory with your story. It was never about you. It was always about me. And so kicking and screaming, I wrote the book. I was honest because I truly believe that transparency is what transforms. And I stayed to my truth, to point people to Christ through my story, to say, if I can go through that and come out on the other side, if I can go from pitiful to powerful, if I can go from being a victim to being victorious, then you can too. And that's the purpose of the book.
Whew. From pitiful to powerful. Honey, I need you to put that on a shirt. A pit from pitiful to powerful. I absolutely love it. Dr. Latoya says, author Sandra Gamble, I applaud you for telling your story. I agree that it is needed for little girls. I suffer from daddy issues that weren't resolved until 2 years ago. Think about that. We're talking about an adult woman in her, I think she's in her mid to late 30s at this point, in her 30 something, who's saying just until 2 years ago, she has been living with daddy issues. So thank you for sharing, Latoya. I really appreciate you. We have a question here. Harold Betts Thoughts is asking, how did your family feel after they read the book?
Okay, so my father's deceased. My mom is still alive, my best friend. I wrote the book and had it published before she ever read the book because I knew that if she had read the book before I had it published, she would have told me to take some things out of it. And I had to be truthful. I had to be honest. I had to be transparent because transparency is what transforms. So I handed my mother the book and I let her read the book. And when I came back and she was done with the book, she shared many tears and she simply looked at me and she said, I am so proud of you. And once I got that from her, it didn't matter what anybody else thought.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I'm glad that you stuck to the truth. And I hear people say all the time, I'm sharing my truth, share your truth. I'm one of those people. I believe that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. There is but one truth. There are lots of realities. We all got realities, right? We all have life, and all of our lives are different and unique, but there is but one truth. And I'm glad that you chose to stick with sharing the truth because it's the truth that sets us free.
It makes us free. That's right. The truth.
That is what makes us free. So I am grateful. Latoya says, I love your transparency. I don't like to share real events. That's why I write fiction. I don't like to go back into my past. So this is a really, really great comment, I think. And I think it leads us into another space that I believe your book will help people to kind of get to a place and then lead them into this other space that you're in. So I have had the opportunity to watch you in your lives and how you talk about mental wellness, and you talk about grief. And this comment right here leads me to ask you about how grief connects with to hell and back. Was it a part of your grieving process? Did you realize that there was some grieving that needed to be done after the book? Were you grieving prior to? Like, how does grief and actually dealing with the past, not ignoring it, not pretending it didn't happen, not just saying, you know what, that's the past. How does grief and your story connect? Or do they?
Well, I had to grieve the fact that I didn't have a traditional father. Like the father I needed was not the father that I got. But I understood later on that my father loved me in the capacity that he could love me. Um, and so I grieved the fact that what I needed, I couldn't get from him. I believe that in order to move forward, that we have to address the past. We don't live there, we don't reside there, but if you don't deal with your past is going to deal with you. And so I'm one of these people as a counselor. You know, when you go to the doctor always want to know about your medical history, your family history, what's in your bloodline. Well, it's the same thing with your past. You got to deal with it because it could potentially come back to haunt you. And so I'm one of these people, I'm an open book. And grief, I had to grieve that I wasn't going to ever have the father that I needed. I grieved that I didn't have the typical childhood um, because it was so volatile in my house. And I understood that I could not change my beginning, but I could rewrite the ending. And that's the power in it, being able to rewrite the ending.
Being able to rewrite the ending. Girl, let me tell you, I'm going to have to go back and replay this conversation because you have said some things that are really poignant and I think necessary for all of us to sit with. I think a lot of times we may, even if you say, well, that's not my dad didn't have mental, health issues, or my dad did. There's so much that we deal with as children, whether it's daddy issues, mommy issues, sibling issues, right? Your own personal issues with being bullied or whatever. There's so many different things that we deal with as children that take us to hell and back, where forgiveness and redemption are still necessary. So even if your story is not about your father or even your mother, I'm sure you've got a to hell and back story where forgiveness and redemption are necessary for you. Would you agree or disagree with me, Sandra?
I absolutely agree. And I want to tell you that I was raised in the church. Let
Mm.
me put that out there. My parents took me to church every Sunday. My dad was on auxiliaries within the church, and he would bring us home and beat us. And so don't think I didn't grow up in church. And that's what was so confusing to me, was how can you dress us up and take us to church and then bring us home and mistreat us? Where's the God in that?
Lord, I feel like that's a whole other book. I feel like that's a whole other book. How can you take us to church and then bring us home and mistreat us, beat us, mishandle us, misuse us? And I'm glad that you brought that out, because I think a lot of times people who sometimes will over spiritualize things will try to make it seem like, if maybe if you would have been in the church, if you had been praying or something like that, right? Then your life would be different. But the truth is there are many people sitting in congregations every single day who are being abused when they leave. They're being mistreated, they're being hurt, all sorts of things. And they're still going to church. They're
And can
still
I
going
say,
to church. You
yeah.
absolutely can.
And my pastor at the time read the book, and he's probably around 70, and he said, "Wow," he said, "I couldn't believe that took place." He said, "I thought that only happened in um, Caucasian household, middle income." And I said to him, "How far removed are you? What do you think you have in your congregation?"
So, were you all a middle class family? Did you grow up in poverty? Tell me what was the socioeconomic level of your house?
Middle class. Yeah,
Middle class.
my parents they were homeowners. We had an acre of land. If you pass by in society standards, we had everything that people wanted. My
Right.
dad worked for a plant that paid a lot of money back then that
Mm-hmm.
people wanted to get to. My mom was a textile worker,
Mm-hmm.
but and I put in the book that I was living, there was a monster inside my home, and the monster happened to be my dad.
Mm, my goodness. And like you said, in her best thought, she says that had to be confusing as a child to be going into the church house. You see people love your father, right? Treat him as this upstanding person. You love your father as a child. Children, that's one thing I don't think people understand. Children love their parents until we get to an age to begin to sort of resent and try to figure things out. But as a child, you love your parents, whether they're really great, whether they're not the best, right? So you love your parents, I'm sure, as a child. And you see these people love your father. And then you get home and there's a monster. Was the monster attributed to mental illness? Was that what caused the monster in your dad?
Yes. And that's why I became a counselor. I had to make pain pay.
Got
So
you.
I went back and got my master's in counseling with an emphasis in mental health because I needed to help other families. My dad was diagnosed with bipolar manic depressive disorder with psychotic features. That was his diagnosis. And anytime you talk about bipolar, you're talking about two. So he's swinging from highs and lows. Excuse me, the goal is to keep him within the middle. And he was non-compliant because there is such a stigma attached to mental illness, especially in African American communities. We've been taught if we pray about it, God can take care of it. And God is the ultimate healer. He's the great physician, but there's many avenues to healing. That's why this conversation needs to be had, because people have mental illness for real. It's not a moral failure. It's not a lack of belief in God. It's just like if we can normalize going to the doctor for hypertension, diabetes, and heart disease, we need to normalize when a person has issues with their mental health. It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way. And we need to stop running away from the
Right.
conversation as African American people in the church and out the church, because God wants us well in every area of our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did it help in your forgive? I have so many questions. I know it's like that's why I love the Speak Up Sis talk show for authors. I love conversations that connect because all of the authors are writing books that are relevant. They're relevant, especially those authors who are writing nonfiction, who are writing memoirs, who are writing things of that nature, because they're real and they actually connect with what people are dealing with. Do you believe for yourself in that place of forgiveness, getting to that place of forgiveness? Do you believe that understanding what was sort of what was causing your father's behaviors, did that help when it came to forgiveness, understanding why he was behaving in that way versus, because I think there's a difference when, and here again, this is just my personal thoughts and thinking of this in the story or the book, excuse me. There's a difference between a dad who's not living with mental health issues. Well, I guess some people might say you got to have some kind of mental health issue if you hurt your family. Some people would think that way. But then there are just some people who are just, they don't have bipolar, they don't have a diagnosis. They ain't nothing diagnosed. They just mean, right? Versus a parent who clearly has a diagnosed mental illness. Do you think that helps, or did it help you in the forgiving department to know why he was behaving that way, or did it not matter because it negatively impacted you?
Okay, so it helped me in understanding it, but it didn't erase the hurt. The hurt and the pain was real, and I had to deal with that. But it did help. It helped me to understand that he couldn't really control it. It's not an excuse, and that's why I don't want any other family to suffer. Make it okay. If your family member is suffering mentally, don't shame them. Help them get the help that they need, because everybody benefits. Just as if when my dad didn't get the help, people around him suffered because he was suffering. And so, yes, it helped me to understand, but it still didn't change the hurt. I still had to go through the healing process. I still had to acknowledge. I still had to deal with the 5 stages of grief, denial. I was still angry. I was still depressed. I was still bargaining. And it finally came to acceptance. But yes, so yeah, it did help, but it didn't change it. I still had to do the work.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Oh, there's so much more I could ask in this conversation. But what I would really like for people to do is to purchase the book. If you are watching, whether you're watching live, whether you are watching on the replay, whenever you find yourself watching this conversation, I want you to consider purchasing To Hell and Back, The Power of Forgiveness and Redemption, written by Sandra Gamble. And I would like for you to share with the people, what is the one thing, people who pick up your book and they read it, what is the one thing, or the top priority, because I'm sure you may have many, but what is the number one thing that you hope people will take away from the reading of your book?
Freedom. Freedom. That's what I hope you take away. The fact that you can be free from your past, that your past does not have to define you, and that God has a great plan for your life if you are willing to work the plan. And you have to be willing to give God your ashes so he can make something beautiful out of them. Don't live in guilt. Don't live in shame. What happens through you is way more important than what happened to you. Take your power back.
What happens through you is way more important than what happens to you. I don't think I've ever heard it stated that way. And I love it. Oh, you dropped so many good things today. Please tell everyone how they can get in contact with you and how they can access To Hell and Back, The Power of Forgiveness and Redemption.
Sure. Please, please, ma'am, please, sir, visit my website, dealinghopenodope.com, for this powerful book. If you know somebody who's experiencing some mental illness, or a family member, be intentional about your gifts in this season. I try to be intentional. I'm tired of just buying perfume and, you know, the small things for people. People need to be healed so they can go out and help. And so visit the website dealinghopenotdope.com, and it's also available on amazon.com. So when you're shopping on Black Friday, add it to your cart.
Absolutely. You all heard her, Sandra Gamble, our guest author today, the author to Hell and Back, The Power of Forgiveness and Redemption. And for those of you who are part of the Speak Up Sis community and you like to go check out what's on the Speak Up Sis bookshelf before you go anywhere else, guess what? To Hell and Back is listed on the Speak Up Sis bookshelf. You can visit speakupsis.com/bookshelf. You see the book, you click on the book. It's going to take you directly to where author Sandra Gamble would like for you to purchase the book. And if you are brand spanking new in this space, please know we do not take any of her coins. We do not get any affiliate fees or anything like that by listing her book on Speak Up Sis bookshelf. It's just an easy way for you to see it and not get, caught up in all the other things, all the shiny whistles. So if you go to speakupsis.com/bookshelf, you'll see To Hell and Back. Click on it and it will take you directly to the link where she would like for you to purchase her book. If you have enjoyed author Sandra Gamble, please make sure that you connect with her. She is awesome. Taishika, hello. Thank you for joining us. She says freedom. Everybody wants freedom. Everybody wants freedom. Absolutely. So if you're ready to get free in some areas, grab a copy of this book. GMF writer C leg. I'm not really sure, but listen, she says what happens through you is more important than what happens to you. Absolutely. I thought that was profound as well. I'm definitely going to hold on to that one. Talk to Q. How you doing, brother? It is good to see you. Always good to see you in this space. You have a good day as well. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I am so thankful and grateful, author Sandra Gamble, that you decided to come into this space and to share with us today. I'm going to continue following your journey. Now that you are a Speak Up Sis bookshelf author, you're a part of our family. We will be following your journey with your book, with all the other things that you're doing. If we can be of help or assistance in helping to promote what it is that you're doing, please feel free to reach out. And I like to give my guests the absolute final word of the show. Do you have a final word of inspiration or maybe encouragement for other writers who are thinking about sharing their stories in the form of a published book?
Somebody is waiting on your yes. Your audience is waiting for you to say yes. And when you say yes to the assignment, then you allow other people to say yes. So do it. Somebody needs your story.
And that's that, y'all. Do it. Thank you so much, Sandra, for coming into the space. I appreciate you, sis. Keep sharing, keep writing, keep doing what it is that God has called you to do, because there are lots of somebodies who need your story. Thank you. And that is it for today, everyone. This has been the Speak Up Sis Talk Show for Authors, Conversations That Connect. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching today live. And if you're watching on the replay, I appreciate you. Author Sandra Gamble appreciates you. And don't forget, this holiday season, don't think so much about the trinkets, the shiny things, all the little baubles. Give a gift that's going to keep on giving. Give the gift of a book. Give the gift of reading, and choose a book. I'll Speak Up Sis bookshelf, like To Hell and Back by Sandra Gamble. And with that, I will see you all next time. If you are interested in being one of our guests on Speak Up Sis Talk Show for Authors, Conversations That Connect, please visit speakupsis.com/talk show. Until next time, don't forget, open up your mouth and speak up.